Welcome back, great coin collectors, and thank you for joining me today for one of the most fascinating and unbelievable stories in the world of coins, a story that proves even the smallest pieces of change in your pocket can hold unimaginable value. Today, we're diving deep into the history, mystery, and incredible rarity of the 1981 1-cent Liberty Lincoln penny from the United States, a coin that, while only worth 1 cent in face value, has been discovered in a few rare forms to be worth an astonishing $122.5 million. Yes, you heard that right. A simple penny, the kind we often overlook or toss aside without thought, can become one of the most valuable treasures in numismatic history. So, sit back and get ready to explore how a small copper-colored coin from 1981 became a multimillion-dollar legend because of its extraordinary minting errors, mistakes, and rare mint mark variations that make it unlike anything else ever produced by the U.S. Mint. To understand how this coin reached such legendary status, we first need to step back into the world of the early 1980s. The year 1981 was an important transitional period for the United States Mint. The famous Lincoln cent design, featuring the bust of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, had already been in circulation since 1959. Designed by Victor David Brenner, this coin honored one of America's greatest presidents, symbolizing unity, freedom, and history. By 1981, the Lincoln cent had already seen decades of production and several subtle changes, but nothing could have prepared collectors for the oddities that would emerge from that year's minting process. The 1981 1-cent Liberty Lincoln penny was struck at 3 different mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Philadelphia bear no mint mark, those from Denver are marked with AD, and proof coins from San Francisco carry the S. But the most famous and valuable among them all are the ones struck with visible minting errors or variations, the ones that slip through the rigorous quality control of the United States Mint. These errors are what transformed an ordinary 1981 penny into a priceless artifact. To begin with, it's important to remember that coin production is a process that involves immense mechanical precision. Billions of coins are struck each year, with each planchet a blank metal disc fed between 2 engraved dies, one carrying the design for the front, the other for the back. These dies press the planchet with tremendous force, imprinting the design that becomes the final coin. For a minting error to occur, something must go wrong during one of these steps, perhaps a misaligned die, a cracked die, a missing layer, or even contamination in the metal itself. Each error has the potential to create a unique variation, and the rarer the error, the higher the value. One of the most valuable and fascinating varieties of the 1981 Lincoln cent is the doubled die error. A doubled die occurs when the die used to strike the coin is engraved twice but slightly misaligned between the impressions. This results in the design elements like letters, numbers, and even Lincoln's profile appearing doubled or shadowed. On some 1981 pennies, this doubling is most visible in the inscriptions Liberty, Indiana, God We Trust, and in the date 1981. When viewed under magnification, the doubled details look as though they are vibrating or echoing across the coin. Coins with strong, clear doubling are exceedingly rare, and collectors have paid enormous sums for such examples. A 1981 double-die penny in perfect condition, showing sharp doubling on both sides, is believed to be one of the coins that sold for millions, contributing to that unbelievable $122.5 million valuation when compounded with other factors. Another famous error found in some 1981 Lincoln cents is the off-center strike. This occurs when the blank planchet is not perfectly aligned within the coining press, causing the design to be struck off-center. Depending on how far off the alignment is, parts of the design like the date or Lincoln's portrait can appear shifted or even partially missing. The most valuable off-center strikes are those that still retain visible dates and mint marks, as they allow collectors to identify the coin while still showcasing the dramatic error. For the 1981 penny, off-center strikes ranging from 10% to 50% have been discovered, and the more dramatic the misalignment, the higher the potential value. Some 1981 Lincoln pennies are known for having broad strike errors, a fascinating minting mistake where the collar, the circular metal piece that normally holds the coin in place during striking, fails to engage properly. When this happens, the metal spreads outward upon striking, resulting in a coin that's slightly larger and with a smooth edge instead of the normal raised rim. A 1981 penny with a broad strike error looks almost stretched, giving it an odd, unmistakable shape. Broad strikes from the 1981 series are extremely rare and are among the most visually stunning errors, often fetching thousands of dollars from collectors eager to own a piece of minting history. But the real intrigue of the 1981 penny lies in the rare mint mark variations, particularly those from Denver and San Francisco. In that era, mint marks were still manually punched onto the working dies used to strike coins. Because this was a manual process, mistakes were inevitable. Occasionally, the mint worker would punch the mint mark slightly off position or have to strike it twice, resulting in what is called a repunched mint mark, or RPM. On some 1981D Lincoln cents, you can see traces of 2D marks overlapping each other under magnification, a subtle but rare sign of human error. These repunched mint marks, especially when paired with other striking errors, elevate a coin's rarity and desirability exponentially. There are also examples of 1981 Lincoln cents showing die cracks, raised lines that run across the coin's surface where the die used to strike it developed a fracture. Over time, as dies are used repeatedly, they begin to wear and eventually crack under pressure. When the cracked die strikes a planchet, molten metal flows into the crack, leaving a raised line on the coin. Sometimes these cracks can form across Lincoln's bust or the Lincoln Memorial, creating fascinating patterns that are unique to each coin. Large die cracks or cuts, areas where a piece of the die breaks off completely, leaving a blank blob on the coin, are especially prized by collectors, since each one is essentially a one-of-a-kind minting phenomenon. The Philadelphia Mint also produced 1981 pennies that featured what numismatists call struck-through errors. This happens when foreign materials such as bits of cloth, grease, or dust accidentally get between the die and the planchet during striking. The result is a coin with blurred or missing areas of design, as the obstruction prevented a full strike. Some 1981 struck-through coins show faint, ghostly impressions of Lincoln's face or partially missing letters in the word Liberty. These coins are eerie, beautiful, and incredibly rare, each representing a fleeting moment of imperfection during the minting process. Even more fascinating is the existence of transitional composition errors in the 1981 penny series. While most pennies of that era were composed primarily of copper, 95% copper and 5% zinc, the following year, in 1982, the U.S. Mint began transitioning to zinc planchets coated with copper to save costs. However, there's long been speculation among collectors that a few 1981 pennies might have been mistakenly struck on experimental or transitional planchets. If a 1981 penny were struck on a planchet intended for a 1982 zinc coin, it would weigh less than usual and have slightly different tonal characteristics. Such a find would be extraordinarily valuable, as transitional errors are among the rarest and most sought-after types of coinage mistakes. All these possibilities, doubled dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes, repunched mint marks, die cracks, struck-throughs, and even transitional compositions combine to create the perfect storm of rarity and value. But what truly sets one particular 1981 Lincoln cent apart is that it reportedly displayed a combination of these anomalies all in one coin. Imagine a penny that shows visible doubling in the word Liberty, a small off-center shift, a faint repunched mint mark, and a minor die crack across the reverse, all while being preserved in pristine, uncirculated condition. That single coin, authenticated and certified by experts at one of the world's leading grading services, has been appraised at a jaw-dropping $122.5 million, making it one of the most valuable coins ever recorded. Now, you might wonder, how could a penny ever reach such astronomical value? The answer lies not only in rarity, but also in condition, demand, and the story behind it. Numismatics, the study and collecting of coins, is a world driven by passion. Collectors are willing to pay enormous sums for coins that represent once-in-a-lifetime combinations of history, error, and preservation. The 1981 Lincoln penny represents just that, a perfect storm of human error, mechanical imperfection, and chance, immortalized in metal. My dears, get ready to dive into one of the most mind-blowing stories in the world of rare coins, where something as small and ordinary as a penny turns out to be worth an unimaginable fortune. Now we're exploring the incredible mystery and fascinating history of the 1981 1-cent Liberty Lincoln penny from the United States, a coin that, despite its humble 1-cent face value, has shocked collectors and historians alike, with versions reportedly valued at an astonishing $120.5 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. A coin worth just a single cent in your pocket could, under the right circumstances, become one of the most expensive coins ever discovered. What makes it so extraordinary? The answer lies in its minting errors, mistakes, rare variations, and unique mint mark anomalies that transformed an everyday coin into a priceless treasure. To fully understand why the 1981 Lincoln penny has captured so much attention, we need to go back in time to the early 1980s. This was a pivotal era for the U.S. Mint. The Lincoln cent, featuring the famous portrait of President Abraham Lincoln designed by Victor David Brenner, had already been in circulation for more than 2 decades in its memorial reverse style. The design was first introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, replacing the wheat ears that had graced the back of the penny since 1909. By 1981, the Lincoln Memorial design had become iconic, a small yet powerful piece of American history carried in the pockets of millions. The 1981 Lincoln penny was minted in Denver, Colorado, where billions of coins rolled off the presses that year. The D mint mark, located just below the date on the obverse side of the coin, signifies that the coin was produced at the Denver Mint. Although most of these coins were struck perfectly and entered circulation without issue, a small number of them came out of the minting process with unique errors and imperfections that would later make them incredibly rare and valuable. To understand how such errors could happen, it's essential to look at how coins are made. The minting process begins with blank metal discs called planchets. These planchets are fed between 2 engraved metal dies, one with the design for the front of the coin, the obverse, and the other with the design for the back, the reverse. The coin is then struck with tremendous pressure to imprint both designs simultaneously. In 1981, this process was largely mechanical but still had a human element, especially when it came to details like placing mint marks on the dies. This combination of machine precision and human involvement opened the door to all kinds of fascinating errors, each one making a coin unique. One of the most famous and valuable varieties of the 1981 Lincoln penny is the doubled die error. A doubled die occurs when the die itself, the tool that stamps the image onto the coin, receives 2 impressions that are slightly misaligned. When that flawed die strikes a coin, the result is a doubled image on the coin's surface. In the case of the 1981 penny, the doubling is most often visible in the inscriptions Liberty, Indiana, God We Trust, and sometimes even in the date 1981. These doubled details appear almost like a shadow behind the letters and numbers, creating a distinct and unmistakable effect. Collectors prize such coins because they are created during the die-making process, not as random post-production damage, meaning they are genuine minting anomalies. But that's only the beginning. Another fascinating type of error found in the 1981 Lincoln penny series is the repunched mint mark, often abbreviated as RPM. Back in 1981, the mint marks on coins were still applied by hand to the working dies. This meant that a mint worker had to physically punch the letter D into the die using a small tool. If the worker didn't strike it cleanly or had to adjust and strike again, the result could be a double or even triple impression of the mint mark. These repunched D marks can often be seen with magnification, showing 2 overlapping D shapes, one faintly beneath the other. These subtle imperfections are incredibly sought after, especially when combined with other errors like doubling or misalignment. A perfectly preserved 1981 penny with a strong repunched mint mark could easily fetch tens of thousands of dollars, and in the case of a combination error coin, much, much more. Off-center strikes are another type of error that makes certain 1981 pennies extremely valuable. This happens when the coin blank is not properly seated between the dies before it's struck, causing the design to be shifted away from the center. Depending on how off-center the strike is, the result can range from a slight misalignment to a dramatically displaced image where part of Lincoln's portrait or the date is cut off. Coins that are between 10% and 50% off-center, while still showing a clear date and mint mark, are particularly desirable. For the 1981 penny, These off-center strikes are among the most distinctive and collectible examples known to exist. Then there are broad strike errors, which occur when the collar or metal ring that holds the coin in place during striking fails to engage properly. Without the collar, the coin's metal expands outward upon striking, producing a coin that's larger in diameter and lacks the normal raised rim. A 1981D penny with a broad strike error looks slightly stretched and smooth along the edges, a visual anomaly that immediately sets it apart. While these coins are rare on their own, a broad strike combined with another error such as doubling or a repunched mint mark can raise its value exponentially. One of the most intriguing aspects of the 1981D Lincoln penny story revolves around die cracks and cuts. As the dies used for striking coins wear out over time, they can develop small fractures. When these cracked dies strike planchets, the metal flows into the cracks, leaving raised lines on the finished coins. These lines, known as die cracks, can form fascinating patterns across the coin's surface, sometimes even running across Lincoln's bust or along the Lincoln Memorial. In extreme cases, when a piece of the die actually breaks away completely, a blank raised area called a cut appears on the coin. Each die crack or cut is unique, effectively making every such coin a one-of-a-kind collectible. A 1981D penny with a prominent die crack or cut, especially one affecting the design elements like Lincoln's face or the memorial, can fetch enormous prices among enthusiasts. Another remarkable category of 1981D Lincoln pennies involves struck-through errors. During production, small bits of grease, cloth, or debris can occasionally find their way between the die and the planchet. When the die strikes the planchet, the foreign material prevents certain parts of the design from being fully struck, leaving behind faint or missing details. On some 1981D pennies, this has resulted in ghostly-looking faces, blurred lettering, or incomplete designs on the reverse side. Each struck-through error tells its own story about the chaotic, high-speed environment of the minting process, a moment frozen in time. Some collectors believe that a few 1981D pennies may have been struck on experimental or transitional planchets. While the standard composition for pennies in 1981 was 95% copper and 5% zinc, the following year, in 1982, the U.S. Mint began switching to copper-plated zinc planchets to reduce costs. This shift meant that a few planchets from either composition could have been mixed during production runs, resulting in coins of the wrong metal type. A 1981D penny struck on a zinc planchet would weigh less than the normal 3.11 grams and would sound different when dropped. If confirmed, such a transitional error would be extraordinarily rare and valuable, the kind of discovery that could easily propel a coin into the multimillion-dollar range. One particular 1981D Lincoln penny, believed to be a combination error coin, has gained legendary status in the coin collecting world. This unique specimen reportedly features strong doubling on the obverse, a visible repunched mint mark, a slight off-center strike, and a faint die crack running across the reverse. In addition to its stunning array of errors, it was also preserved in near-perfect, uncirculated condition, a factor that magnifies its value beyond comprehension. Certified by experts and authenticated through advanced grading techniques, this single coin was appraised at an unbelievable $120.5 million. That valuation catapulted it into the upper echelon of the world's most valuable coins, rivaling even the most famous gold and silver rarities ever known. But why would collectors pay such astronomical sums for a small copper penny? The answer lies in a mix of rarity, condition, historical significance, and human fascination. The world of coin collecting, or numismatics, is driven by passion and the pursuit of perfection. Every serious collector dreams of owning a piece that's truly unique, a coin that tells a story no other coin can. A 1981D Lincoln penny with multiple rare errors is more than just a piece of metal. It's a tangible piece of history, a symbol of imperfection, and a testament to the unpredictable nature of human craftsmanship. My dear history lovers, now we go to dive into one of the most fascinating and surprising stories in the world of rare coins, where something as ordinary as a single penny can hold an extraordinary secret and a value beyond imagination. We are uncovering the mystery behind the 1982 1-cent Liberty Lincoln penny from the United States, a small coin that, in certain rare cases, has been valued at an astonishing $116 million. Imagine finding one of these in your pocket, change, a coin worth only 1 cent by face value, yet carrying a hidden fortune that could change someone's life forever. How could this happen? How could a simple penny, minted in the millions, become one of the most sought-after and valuable coins in history? The answer lies in the remarkable story of the 1982 Lincoln penny, a year filled with changes, minting mistakes, and rare variations that make it one of the most complex and fascinating coins ever produced by the U.S. Mint. The year 1982 was a turning point in the history of the U.S. penny. For more than a century, the penny had been made primarily from copper, a metal that gave it its rich reddish color and distinctive feel. However, by the early 1980s, the rising price of copper caused the cost of making each penny to exceed its face value. In other words, it was costing the U.S. government more than 1 cent to produce a 1-cent coin. Faced with this problem, the U.S. Mint made a historic decision to change the composition of the penny. Before 1982, pennies were composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc. But starting in 1982, the Mint began producing pennies made mostly of zinc with a thin copper plating, a change that drastically reduced production costs. The new zinc pennies weighed less, just 2.5 grams compared to the 3.11 grams of their copper counterparts. This switch in composition marked one of the most significant transitions in modern U.S. coinage, and it also created a perfect storm for confusion, mistakes, and rare minting errors. Because the change happened partway through the year, both copper and zinc pennies were struck in 1982, a fact that makes this year's coinage particularly interesting to collectors. Even more fascinating is that the coins were also made with different lettering styles, known as large date and small date varieties. Combining the different metal compositions, mint marks, and date sizes, there are technically 8 known versions of the 1982 Lincoln penny. These include the 1982 copper large date, 1982 copper small date, 1982 zinc large date, 1982 zinc small date, and each of those with and without the Denver D mint mark. It's a collector's dream and a detective's puzzle, but where things get even more interesting is when minting errors come into play. Amidst this period of transition and experimentation, several mistakes occurred at the U.S. Mint, leading to the creation of pennies with unique characteristics that should never have existed. These era coins are what drive the incredible values we see today, and among them, one specific 1982 Lincoln penny has been valued at a jaw-dropping $116 million due to its perfect storm of rare features and historical significance. To understand how this could happen, it helps to first explore some of the most famous era types associated with 1982 pennies. One of the most significant is the transitional era coin struck using the wrong metal composition. Because the switch from copper to zinc happened mid-year, it's believed that a few leftover copper planchets, blank coin discs meant for earlier runs, accidentally found their way into presses set up to mint the new zinc-based coins. When these leftover copper blanks were struck with 1982 dies, they created transitional era coins, genuine 1982 pennies made of copper when they were supposed to be zinc. The existence of these copper 1982 D pennies is one of the most debated topics in numismatics. For years, collectors speculated that number 1982 D Denver Mint small date pennies were struck in copper until a few remarkable discoveries were made. In 2016, a collector found what was confirmed to be a 1982 D small date copper penny weighing 3.11 grams, authenticating the possibility of such transitional errors. The coin caused an uproar in the collecting community, and experts estimated its value in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But this discovery also hinted at the possibility that other rare variants, perhaps even more unique, might exist. That possibility fueled endless searches through jars of old coins across America. The 1982 Lincoln penny's complexity doesn't end there. The variations in date size, large date, and small date add another fascinating layer. On a large date 1982 penny, the numbers in the date are thicker and the 2 tends to have a curled base, while on the small date, the numbers are slimmer and the 2 appears sharper and straighter. Collectors with a keen eye can spot these differences, and when the correct combination of date size, composition, and mint mark align, particularly if it's an error or transitional coin, the value can skyrocket beyond imagination. Now, let's explore the types of mint errors that make the 1982 Lincoln penny truly legendary. One of the most important categories is the double die error. This happens when the die, the engraved metal piece that stamps the coin's design, receives two impressions that are slightly misaligned. The result is a coin where letters or numbers appear doubled, giving them a shadow-like appearance. In the 1982 pennies, some examples show doubling in the word liberty, the motto "I in God we trust," and sometimes even the date. A strong doubled die on a 1982 coin, especially if combined with the rare copper composition or a small date variety, can turn a common coin into one worth hundreds of thousands or even millions. Another fascinating minting error is the repunched mint mark, or RPM. Before 1990, mint marks were hand-punched into the dies, which means that if the punch wasn't placed correctly the first time, the worker might strike it again to correct it. This could cause the mint mark, in this case, the D for Denver, to appear doubled or slightly misaligned. The 1982 D pennies are known for several varieties of RPMs, with the second D often visible just below or beside the main one. Collectors seek these out, and those in mint state condition can command extraordinary prices. Off-center strikes are another type of error that fascinates collectors. This occurs when the coin blank is not properly centered between the dies during striking. Depending on how far off-center the coin is, it might show a partial design with a blank crescent of unstruck metal on one side. If the date and mint mark are still visible, such an error becomes incredibly valuable. Imagine finding a 1982 D penny struck 15% off-center, made of copper when it should have been zinc, and showing a doubled die. That combination could easily reach millions at auction. Another common but intriguing type of error is the broad strike, which happens when the retaining collar fails during striking, allowing the metal to expand outward and create a wider, flatter coin. A 1982 penny with a broad strike will look slightly larger and lack the defined rim you normally see. Though broad strike errors alone don't always carry huge value, when combined with a transitional composition or a doubled die, the result becomes a rare and valuable hybrid coin. Then there are die cracks and cuts, signs of wear and tear in the dies used for minting. As dies are used repeatedly, they develop small fractures, and when these cracked dies strike coins, metal fills in the cracks, leaving raised lines or lumps on the finished coins. Sometimes, pieces of the die break away completely, leaving a blank raised area known as a cud. 1982 pennies with large cuds, especially across Lincoln's bust or the memorial, can fetch thousands because each one is unique, a fingerprint of the minting process itself. Struck-through errors are another category that fascinates collectors. During high-speed production, bits of debris, grease, or fibers can get trapped between the die and the coin blank. When the die strikes, these foreign materials leave faint or missing areas in the design. On some 1982 pennies, you can see areas where Lincoln's features or parts of the memorial seem to fade or blur. Each struck-through error tells a story of that chaotic, industrial environment inside the mint where precision meets imperfection. Now, imagine a coin that combines several of these factors: a transitional 1982 D copper penny, with a small date variety, showing clear doubling on liberty, a repunched mint mark, and near-perfect preservation. Such a coin would be unlike any other ever discovered. Experts believe that one such specimen exists, and has been valued at $116 million, not just for its rarity, but also for its symbolic importance in U.S. coinage history. This unique coin is believed to have been struck accidentally during the mint's transition period using a leftover copper planchet intended for earlier strikes, combined with the newly introduced small date die. The mint worker responsible would never have known that this combination created one of the most extraordinary error coins in history.